It's our responsibility to protect and preserve for future generations what's been given to us. My name is Dacre Stoker. I'm the Executive Director of Aiken Streetscapes. You know, Aiken was not always full of these beautiful trees like we see to this day. When Aiken really came on the map in the early 1800s, Alfred Dexter laid out all the parkways. There were hardly any trees in sight. This was all farmland. But the good thing is people that moved here realized it's really important to have trees for reasons we'll get into. But Aiken Streetscapes came around as a result of this beautiful trees that were being planted by people, being cared by different people in our parkways and our rights of ways, in the parks themselves. But then civilization kind of took over. And as houses moved in, buildings moved in, and streets were beginning to be paved, the trees began to have a bit of a stress. So we now have a Tree City USA, but that means we need to do a lot of things to help protect and preserve those trees. And that's where Aiken Streetscapes sets in. You know, the City of Aiken does a pretty good job, but it's the public-private initiative of Aiken Streetscapes that really does help Aiken prosper and for the trees that we have and we embrace to really live well and to enhance our community. So Aiken Streetscapes started in 2017. It's a wonderful story. Rob and Pam Johnston lived in Aiken earlier in life, moved to Atlanta, kind of realized there are not many trees in Atlanta, although it does have some nice parkways. They moved back to Aiken and recognized that although we had a lot of wonderful trees in Aiken, we didn't have a great management plan for them. So he went to the city and said, I want to help. And that's typical of Rob and Pam Johnston. They see a problem, I want to help. So number one, the first thing they did was paid for an inventory of all the city-owned trees. It's not trees owned by private people, but city trees in the parkways, in the rights of ways, in all of our parcels, that's city parks and so on, as well as the city arboretum trail, which is on Colleton Avenue. And they realized that the total assets of all these trees, $130 million worth of trees. Over 23,000 trees owned by the city, and there wasn't an adequate management plan for them. So what Rob did was not only paid for the management plan and the inventory, that he went to the city and said, if you will match my $200,000 a year, I'll donate that money to a proactive pruning program, as well as to a fertilization and root invigoration program. And occasionally also, when we do have to lose a tree for some reason, we will pay to replace the trees. So that was the impetus to get Aiken Streetscapes started. And since then, sort of our sister organization, the Aiken Land Conservancy, that deals with land all over the county, they've come in and they also help contribute funds for that. We would love private citizens to do the same, because we all love our trees, but the city just does not have enough money. They've got so many things they got to pay for to take care of them. And we like this public-private initiative that started way back in the early 1800s. But Rob and Pam have really followed along with that, and I'm very proud to be the executive director. On their own, they could grow naturally, but until we start paving roads and having houses move in, dealing with strong storms where they don't have as much earth to grow in. So the root systems of urban trees, because of roads, because of parking lots, because of buildings, are not as strong as trees out in the wild. So we've got to try to help those. And that's a huge stressor. We've got to encourage people not to park in the parkways. So here's an interesting little factoid for you. The drip line of a tree is where all their branches reach out to. If you look at that, you'll realize that that's where the actual roots are. So if you park under a tree to have shade for your car, you're actually compacting the soil. That is slowing down the absorption of water and nutrients to that very same tree. So you're actually hurting the tree by parking underneath it for the shade. So we're trying to encourage people, don't park in the parkways. That's a big major stressor. We can also do that, and that's one of the projects we're doing right now, which is actually paying Bartlett tree specialists to aerate the soil. Go in with it like an air hose, loosen up the soil, and then put a mixture of water and fertilizer so it can go through the soil and be absorbed into the trees and be strong again and flourish for another 150 years. I think probably the most visible ongoing project we have in Aiken is the South Boundary Oak Alley. That was a cooperative project with Dominion Power, City of Aiken, and also our partners, Aiken Land Conservancy, to fundraise, to be able to assess the health of these trees and realize that the most important thing we can do is bury the power lines underneath the trees that border South Boundary. That means no more utility cuts. We all look at those, they're unsightly, but they're also really unhealthy to the tree. So if there was a power line, and we still have lots of them in Aiken, and we're going to slowly work on those as well, but we've got to start with the most identifiable ones. Any tree branch within 10 feet of a power line can be cut down by the contractors for Dominion Power. And that's to protect the power lines if there's an ice storm or a windstorm. And we realize we need that for the health of our people that get electricity. But it's not good for the tree. It throws off the balance. It also may cut off too many of the branches so that the leaves don't absorb much in the photosynthesis process. So what we try to do is find the money, work with the city, work with Dominion, and bury those power lines underground so the trees aren't subjected to any more power line cuts. What we also do on these particular trees is prune them so that they grow in an archway over South Boundary. Not only is it beautiful, very sightly, but it helps the trees stop being cut by some South Carolina Department of Transportation, who have a state mandate that allows them to cut any trees that get closer to 14 feet hanging over the roadway. Because, trucks can't drive along and get the top of them cut off. That's not very safe, and it's certainly not good for the tree. So we do this proactive pruning for the health of the tree, for the aesthetics of the tree, and for the good of the community. And we've done that very well just a couple of years ago. We completed it last year, and we'll be moving on throughout the downtown core, through the dirt roads of Aiken, to do more of this undergrounding where we can afford, and the city does a cost sharing with Dominion Power as well. The other thing that we're doing right now as we speak is this ground fertilization and root invigoration to all the magnolias on the parkways on Park Avenue. For over 125 years, Aiken has been renowned for its dedication and preservation of our glorious parks, our magnificent trees, and beautiful parkways. It's our responsibility to protect and preserve for future generations what's been given to us. And you can help too. Don't rely upon just Pam and Rob to fund this whole thing. Go to aikenstreetscapes.org. The Community Foundation handles all our money. It's tax deductible. If you feel like we do and want to protect these trees for future generations, make a donation and it'll go to a good cause to preserve and protect our grand trees in Aiken.